Life can be a balancing act for any adult, but if you find yourself constantly late, disorganized, forgetful, and overwhelmed by your responsibilities, you may want to ask your doctor about ADHD, also known as Adult Attention Deficit Disorder. Christine Gorgas, the operations manager with Gulf Coast Clinical Research Center, is here with some ideas on how to help. So good morning, welcome back. We've missed you.
It's so great to always be here and be able to talk about
these
this
is so interesting. And I think, you know, when you hear ADHD, and certainly when you hear adult ADHD, my first question I had for you in the commercial break was, can you just get it when you enter adulthood?
Right. And that's a very common misconception, that there is ADHD that comes on later in life as you're an adult. And it really isn't true. Now, the presentation of your ADHD can change over the course of your life. But true ADHD, the symptoms had to have been there before the age of 7 in the DSM-4 criteria. They actually just changed that to the age of 12. What usually happens if you start to have these symptoms later in life, it's usually because of something else, maybe depression, maybe anxiety, maybe a cognitive disorder. But true ADHD is a childhood disorder that persists throughout adulthood.
Well, and it's so interesting because I think people our age, when you go back and look at our childhood, I mean, they weren't talking about it.
No, they really weren't.
So it's easy to see why it would be not noticed.
Right, and a big part of ADHD has to do with impairment, and when that impairment starts to affect your life. And usually we see that more as an adult because it's starting to affect our social interactions, it's starting to affect our work interactions. As a child, there really isn't that much room for impairment that you see. Usually it's, oh, they were getting in trouble in school, or they weren't learning as easily as maybe another child would. So a lot of times when patients say, I think this just came on, when we go through the diagnostic criteria and start talking about their childhood, it's always been there, but now it's becoming a real problem.
Real quickly, I wanted to mention too, if people think, oh, I'm an ADD, you were saying that's really not a term that psychologists use anymore.
It really isn't. When you look at the true disorder criteria, it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That is the name of the disorder. Now, there are 3 subtypes, or what we now call presentations to ADHD. And you can be ADHD primarily in attention subtype, which is usually what people refer to as ADD. Or you can be ADHD hyperactive subtype, or a combined subtype, meaning you have symptoms of both.
And we have some screenshots I think we want to show to kind of demonstrate kind of what the differences are as well. So let's go ahead and get to some of these.
This would be primarily the, this again is the 3 subtypes.
Okay,
so
this
everything is classified as ADHD. It's either predominantly inattentive, predominantly hyperactive, or the combined.
So within ADHD, there's 3 different varieties.
Exactly. There's 3 different varieties. And now these are characterized by what type of symptoms you show primarily. Now these are the inattention subtypes. So this one really has to deal with your ability to focus, your ability to stay on task, making careless mistakes, things like difficulty sustaining attention. You're not able to listen to instructions. If they take longer than 30 seconds, you're already in your own world. This typically shows people are avoiding any type of activity that they really have to have sustained long attention spans for.
Well, and I can see where that would really come up in a workplace setting when you go into that adult, you know, kind of the real life, or maybe even later life in college where you really have to focus in. I can see where those symptoms would all of a sudden really...
Exactly. This is usually what we see more adults come in and say that they have the bigger problem with. This is where their impairment is with being able to sustain attention and being able to focus and get things done in their day.
And then there's the hyperactivity part.
The hyperactivity impulsivity type, really, we see this more in children, and this is usually the one that's identified the earliest, because this is the one where you're running around like you're on the go, like you're driven by a motor. The patients can't sit still, they fidget a lot, they talk excessively, they interrupt people, they have trouble waiting their turn. These are the hyperactivity ones. Usually we see this in adults more as a general feeling of restlessness and fidgetiness, that they just always feel fidgety, they always feel that sense of nervousness that they need to be moving around.
We have about a minute left. Let's talk about there is treatment options. So what are the current treatment options? What do people need to know?
Currently, ADHD is treated primarily with the stimulants, methylphenidate and amphetamines. Now, these are stimulants. It kind of is counterintuitive that you give a hyperactive child a stimulant. But what the stimulants do is activate that part of your brain that actually controls attention and being able to be calm and still. There are newer treatment options that are coming out there that are non-stimulants. The stimulants can cause some issues because they are controlled substances. They are expensive, and so the newer trials are looking at medications that are not classified as stimulants.
That's interesting. I'll be curious to see if those, how well they do, and that's what we're trying. That's what you guys are trying to figure out now. And
we're enrolling a trial now for adults with ADHD, and this particular trial is a year-long open-label trial with a new medication that's a non-stimulant.
Very interesting. Well, if somebody is, watching this morning and says, "Yes, that's me," I went actually, and there is, there is something you can do about it. So what do you suggest people do?
Well, we always stress education. Educate yourself first. The internet is a wonderful tool to look at the different symptoms, to think back. Talk to your parents about, was I like this as a child? And get that history. And then you can always contact us either on our website or by phone. Come in for a free consultation, and we're happy to talk to you about what we do and what the options and the treatments available in the community are.
I'm happy to talk with you. I always learn so much. So, Christine, we love having you here. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll send it over to staff.
All right, confused about Obamacare? Up next, how you can get some direction signing up for the new health care law. And trust me, it is much easier than you think. Stick around.